Hey everybody, Dom Nicastro here, CMSWire managing editor for our latest CMO Circle. We have Adrianna Nowell. She is the Brightspot Chief Marketing Officer. Adri, as they call you. What's going on?
Not much. I am happy to be here. Nice to meet you, Dom.
Yeah, you too. So I've been in CMSWire for 10 years, and I've followed Brightspot's story along the way. I know there's been some great technology advancements, and I'm glad to have you talking about the role of CMO and fun stuff that you're doing in that role and what Brightspot's up to. So let's just start with a little bit about yourself, how you landed at Brightspot as CMO and what's going on in your world these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been at Brightspot for a little over a year. I've spent the bulk of my career in software technology. I actually started out in software development and I've made the path into marketing. So interesting career path and kind of steps along the way. But I joined Brightspot, which is a CMS company. And if you're unfamiliar with what a CMS is, let me kind of just start with the acronym. It's a content management system, and it's essentially the application that orchestrates all of the content production, where you manage it, how you publish and edit it, and the distribution of that content across multiple touch points. So that's what we do. We also offer services to kind of pair with that CMS. So that's a little bit about kind of what a CMS and what Brightspot does. I joined the company after going through a failed content migration and CMS migration project. Not necessarily failed, but a really challenging one, I would say. It didn't meet the expectations. And I kind of opened my eyes to a lot of the CMS providers that were out there. And I joined Brightspot because I was so attracted to what they had to offer. They're very unique in the way that they bring their solution to market. A lot of CMS companies will kind of box you into, you either get something that's plug and play, it's really easy to use, it's fast to work with, but it's not flexible. And you have to make these trade-offs of, do I want speed and ease, or do I want do I want to be able to customize it? And with Brightspot, we give our customers both. They have everything that they need to migrate quickly, to publish, to edit, to store their content, to set up workflows. But we also give them the ability to customize literally everything, anything on the front end, anything on the back end. So you get kind of the best of both worlds with Brightspot. And so it's a fun role for me to step into as a marketing leader, to take really great product to market and to be able to really amplify what they've been doing so well for so many years.
Yeah.
So personally, I'm a mother. I love to ride mountain bikes in my free time. So, a job is definitely part of my life, but I also get to have a lot of chaos and fun with my kids who are 5 and 6.
So that chaos is kind of dovetailed with the chaos of that prior CMS implementation, right?
Yes, exactly.
And I love that because you're coming from the vantage point of listen, I've been through these implementations. I've been through these CMS selection stories, right? And now I'm marketing to people that are needing to do the same thing I was doing, have the same frustrations, and I know their language. I love when I can interview a CMO that is a CMO of a MarTech company, right? Because you're walking the walk, you're talking to the people who are like you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we were talking about the MarTech market, in a mature market like that, a lot of well-known players, a lot of big marketing teams on these players, that you see in the Gartner Magic Quadrants, Forrester Waves, and all that. So what are the core elements of Brightspot's brand strategy in this flooded market? How do you what's critical to make, from your point of view as a CMO, to make Brightspot stand out in the crowd?
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in a mature market like that when there's a lot of providers. And like I said, the spectrum of what you can get with a CMS is very wide. You've got everything from kind of your low to no code into your digital experience platforms. And so making sure that you can stand out when you've got a lot of options out there for companies to purchase and work with a vendor or services provider is key, right? And so for us, and really just, I think just strategy wise, you need to know what you do, how you do it, and why it matters. You have to have a strong grasp on what are you doing for your customers? You need to know kind of what market you're going after, and you also need to acknowledge you shouldn't be everything for everyone. I think that's where a lot of people get lost in mature markets, is you look at what other competitors are doing, and maybe they're successful at capturing a niche market that you might that you could go pursue, but maybe that's not the right thing, right? You really have to narrow in and stay focused on what are the key markets or the key segments or verticals that we want to go after. What does that audience need? And then what are we going to do to meet their needs? And then from a marketing standpoint, making sure you have a really solid understanding of what those people care about, not what you care about, what do they care about, so that then you're building the right solutions to meet their needs, that you're speaking their language, that you're positioning your solution appropriately. And it gives you just focus on what you're doing and how you're going to market, so that you carve out your niche. Your brand strategy really becomes one that is niche in nature, and you're trying to attract a very specific audience segment.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too. Like, following up on that, it seems like there's a lot of, in your world, let me ask you, is there a lot of focus on verticals? You know, do you feel like you and your marketing teams that you lead, like, okay, look at our customers. They are living in the healthcare space mostly, or they are living in financial services. Do you try to stand out in that sense too? Like, we're the CMS for blank vertical.
Yeah. So just segmentation in general is, it is a mix of art and science, truly. And how do you kind of define your segments? So for some companies, it's as simple as just segmenting based on verticals, like you mentioned. These are kind of the verticals that we want to go after. We deliver a similar message into the vertical segments, or regionally, this is how we want to go to market. But oftentimes it's not as simple as that, especially when you talk about a solution that can be sold, like you were mentioning, like a MarTech solution, where most companies have marketing. Those companies span a lot of different verticals. And so it's often the case that you have to look at horizontal or similar groupings of multiple verticals. And so you're looking for the commonalities of either use cases or overlapping industry segments where the needs are very similar, and therefore the way that you're going to talk about the solution is going to be similar. And maybe there's nuance, from vertical to vertical, but you have a common set of things that are similar enough to kind of group them as a segment. And that's difficult to do. If you rewind to when I came into the organization a year ago, it is probably one of the most difficult things to do as a newcomer into the organization, because it requires that you have pretty intimate knowledge of who are your customers and what do they care about in the market and the competitors. So you really need to spend that time understanding, like I mentioned, what you do, how you do it, why it matters, who are your customers, what do your prospects think. And that's kind of the easy part, though. Getting the segments, like defining those use case groupings or whatever those logical buckets are. Then the hard part comes into the picture, which is picking the priorities, and how do you focus your efforts and get everyone in the organization aligned? Because this is when a lot of the opinions or misalignment come into the picture of, like, where you've had product market fit, or maybe we should chase, we should prioritize based on industries that are or segments that are fast growing, or any number of attributes. And I'd say taking the bias out of the picture of the equation and really taking an objective point of view when you do this is probably the best thing you can do. So scoring kind of the attributes that matter and creating a weighted model where you can look at the things that matter for your business and the markets that you want to pursue. And then you really just score each of those segments. That'll give you a good starting point to get everyone on the same page on the segments that you want to pursue. So for us at Brightspot, we look at use cases. Right, use cases are the thing that overlap multiple industries. And so we've identified key segments that kind of have very distinct use cases. And you can see those mapped out on our website. That's our strategy, right? We're going after a lot of the kind of the use case market, which that's a lot of what the CMS market really is.
Yeah, like defining what the problem was and how Brightspot came in and helped solve that problem, and is staying with that. Yeah. Provide that with that customer along the way, along the journey, to continue to help with that problem too. Yeah. I feel like that's a good way to look at it, having those use cases down pat, knowing your strengths and knowing what you did for that particular provider, and someone else might have that same problem too, or a similar problem anyway.
That's right.
Yeah. about those knowing that buyer intimately, like you said, what are some of the methods as a marketing leader you and your teams, deploy to really get that intimacy with the buyer? Because man, customer data, prospect data, so many tools out there. Like, do you feel like you have a centerpiece, right? A centerpiece data management tool that helps do all this and helps that buyer intimately? Or is it the reality is it's a best of breed? There are a lot of tools at play here and strategies.
So buyer insights, or just customer insights, is something that is really important to me as a marketing leader. I've spent a lot of my career in product marketing, where you have to have the discipline of coming in and really understanding what the customer cares about or what your prospect cares about. And I've always kind of said, you have to live by this rule. Your opinion is interesting, but sometimes it's irrelevant. And what I mean by that is, sometimes your opinion is a great place to start. It'll give you a good hypothesis, something that you need to explore, but you can often be wrong, right? Like, what I think doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's what the customer or the prospect thinks and what they need. So having that discipline of talking to the market is so important. And I've been in a lot of companies where it's sometimes shocking when multiple people in the organization are disconnected from the customer, and it's more common than what you might think.
Yeah.
And that's scary, because it means you can be making decisions that are not rooted in what the market needs or what your customers really care about. And it's especially dangerous in an organization that is smaller or more resource constrained or is having to make trade-offs. So having that discipline of talking to customers, constantly being connected with them, and it's not just in the marketing team, it has to span the entire organization. You should always be interfacing with your customers and prospects. And you should also be interfacing with the prospects that you lost. That's where a lot of the gold is. When you can go talk to the folks that you were not able to win over, they chose not to work with you. You can learn a lot there. So win-loss is the one thing that I would say is, like, it's always the thing that I bring to a new organization, of standing up a proper win-loss function so that you can really uncover the things that are not working. And that's going to be true all the way from marketing tactics, channels, and how you want to reach and influence someone, all the way down into, are we effective at having a sales conversation? Are we reaching the right buyers? Are we, are we priced appropriately or packaged appropriately? You can uncover things throughout the entire funnel. And it's really surprising sometimes how you can learn things in a win-loss conversation that would never be documented in any data or repository tool that you're using internally, because sometimes it's just difficult to capture, or people just don't tell you the truth during the sales cycle, and they're more willing to do it when the deal's closed and they've said sorry.
Yeah, I love that rule that you mentioned. Your opinion is interesting, but sometimes irrelevant. It just rings true in any kind of business, like editorial. Like, oh, no one, I don't think they're going to read that article. Like, okay, well, what data are you using to inform that opinion? And I just know, like, sometimes you just feel like an article is not going to hit, and then it does. So your opinion is irrelevant in that situation because you didn't know until you tried it. But yeah, having data-driven decisions is such a smart way to go, especially when you're talking about MarTech, marketing data, customer data, stuff like that. I mean, it's all there for you. It's just a matter of, can you use them, to your advantage, to inform your opinion, like making a data-driven opinion, right? I always felt smarter in meetings when I said things like, well, our advisors tell us versus Dom Nicastro thinks, right? So I get it 100%. A lot of people talk about go-to-market, right? Like go-to-market discipline. What does that mean to you, particularly as a CMO in the context of Brightspot, and how do you kind of ensure that every market entry is executed, with that great precision and alignment with your overall business strategy? It all sounds perfect, but how do you get it done? What does go-to-market discipline mean to you?
Yeah. Go-to-market discipline is really, it spans everything from how do you acquire, service, and retain your customers. And that's kind of that full life cycle. And thinking about how you do that for each segment that you are going after. The way that you go to market, where you attract and how you find and bring people in is going to be different if you're marketing in EMEA than, you know, here. Like the nuances are going to be there. They're going to be present. Also, the sales channels that are used. Are you doing direct sales? Is it channel sales? Are technology providers the one that are bringing you in? Do digital agencies bring you in? Like the way in which you go and reach and find and sell to a prospect is going to be different for every single company. And having that discipline to really understand the way people buy and then to apply, you know, an operational layer on top of that so that you can create an environment in which that it works. That's what go-to-market discipline is to me. And then really just measuring the effectiveness of every single thing that you are doing. So if, you know, measuring by segment, by persona type, by industry vertical, like making sure you put the lens on top of, are we effective in going at capturing the market? Are we effective at servicing our customers? Really understanding, are they satisfied? Do they have additional needs that we need to be servicing? That's so important for, you know, that go-to-market discipline as you described. But like I said, it all just kind of ties back into the way that you acquire, you service, and you retain them.
We've come such a long way, right? And I can totally relate to that with the measuring the effectiveness, you know, because we, for instance, have great writers, right? We have great writers that we brought into CMSWire and everything, and we know they're great. They're great journalists. They get great sources. And they write great articles. And at the end of the day, though, we measure, you know, cost per article, how much time do they put in, how much editing time did it take. So we have like a nice internal tool that does that. And it's amazing to get those insights along with how we know they are very good, but let's see how it performed, right? Not just views, page views, but actual editing time, cost per article, everything. So it is such a good point to have that. Everything you do, every campaign needs to be measured and measured again and put up against past campaigns. You know, why not go to an old one that did well, right? So I get it. I get it. Hey, we're getting close to wrapping up here. And you told me in our little pre-interview that something to do with your career, you said it's probably been the greatest mistake you've ever made. So that's kind of like that. I would use that as a lead in, Adri, if we were like teasing this. I was like, tune in to find out the greatest mistake she's ever made. Why don't you enlighten our listeners to what that was?
Yeah. So, you know, my greatest mistake, honestly, was the fact that I have an engineering background. So I studied computer science and I started out and kind of down the software development path. And I very quickly discovered like, this is not the job for me. So when you took what I loved about computer science, the kind of practice of thinking analytically and problem solving and being able to write code and have these challenges in front of you, but it was broken up in, you know, smaller bite-sized chunks of day-to-day life and school and all of that. And you go into the real world, and I was placed in an environment in which that's all I was doing every single day when I came into work. I very quickly just felt, you know, personally disconnected from the application and the end user kind of impact that software has on someone's life. And I craved that. And so I found myself gravitating more and more towards a role where I had that customer facing element. And so I moved into product management, I moved into product marketing, and I just fell in love with marketing over time. You know, that being said, why I say it's kind of the greatest mistake is there's a lot of things that I've taken with me as I've made that journey that still hold true in the way that I behave in a marketing role. One is, you know, it benefits me to have that technical background because I feel I'm better equipped to take complex topics or, you know, challenging topics and translate them for a non-technical audience. And I also have brought with me just the discipline of that analytical thinking and using data to inform everything that we do within the marketing organization. I mean, we kind of ruthlessly measure everything that we're doing because you really want to know that the money you're putting in is actually benefiting the organization. And so those two things have kind of stayed with me, even though it would be very dangerous if I were to ever try to write a line of code, you know, at this point. I don't think I can do that.
You're too rusty in that sense. You just It's just
haven't done that in a while.
okay.
But it's definitely, it's an interesting path for someone to take in a marketing role. But I've really enjoyed being able to translate that technical background into a marketing discipline.
Yeah, it sounds like it's almost like you're a few years ahead of the game, because you hear a lot of people in the industry saying that marketers should get more technical and they should have technological background. In other words, the whole marketing technologist. Do you see yourself as a marketing technologist, or is it that rusty that you're like, I forgot everything, Dom?
I haven't forgotten everything. Like I could maybe do a few things.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I consider myself a marketer who just happens to have a technical background, I guess. Maybe that makes me a marketing technologist, as you said.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that the analytical piece in marketers today is so important. And I think that if you're a modern day marketer, and you're not bringing some type of analytical discipline to your organization, you're going to quickly be left behind. And that doesn't always mean that the marketing leader has to have that discipline, but you've got to have the right partnership and kind of appetite to incorporate that into the way that you make decisions.
Yeah. I think a lot of the aspiring young marketing leaders, let's say 25 years ago, maybe thought, they looked at it and said, I'm going to be on stage and talking about my brand. And that still happens.
I love that stuff too.
Right. And then the reality is, then 25 years later, it's like, I got a coffee going, I'm looking at Zoom all day, and I'm on spreadsheets. But it's a lot of, more than half the job is probably analyzing data in campaigns and how do we do performance measurement. Yeah. Adrian, you've been great. Great catch up for CMO Circle with us at CMSWire. We super appreciate it. So Brightspot is the company, CMS, and Adrian, we appreciate you catching up with us, talking about marketing leadership and all things data analytics and everything in between for marketing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great being here.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye now.